Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnana-Shalakaya
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Shri Chaitanya
Manishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadamaham Dhyati Swapadantikam.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Śrīla Prabhupada encouraged us to read the Bhagavad Gita every day. Prabhupada often said, I read my Gita myself every day. So he was emphasizing that even though I've translated it, I still read it every day. Prabhupada has first translated the Bhagavad Gita when he was in India. As you probably know, how many of you have read Prabhupada Lilamrita? Those who haven't read it should read it. So Prabhupada, before he went to the West, he had translated the Bhagavad Gita in the early 40s. And Prabhupada was looking for someone to help finance the printing. As you know, Prabhupada was struggling to establish Krishna consciousness. And his constant meditation was, how can I fulfill my Guru's order? Which was? Take Lord Chaitanya to the Western world. So Prabhupada was struggling and looking for someone to help finance the publishing. And finally he found somebody who said, okay, show me the manuscript and then I'll look into it. And when he came back to Calcutta, he found somebody had sold the manuscript. Again, in India they sell Radhi, paper. Someone thinking this was useless and sold it. Just imagine, years of hard work. And at that time, Prabhupada didn't have any secretaries, no computer, no typewriter. The whole thing was done by hand, in his own handwriting. Thousands of pages. And when he discovered the manuscript had been sold by the servant, he did not get discouraged. He sat down and translated the Gita again. Prabhupada at a certain point changed his residence to Nanadhamma temple in Vrindavan. He had 2 rooms over there. One room he oversaw the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. He derived great inspiration from these Samadhis. And in the other room, Prabhupada would cook, and that was his kitchen. And Prabhupada was so determined to translate and print his books that he would take a rickshaw, a horse rickshaw called Thanga, from Mathura, from Vrindavan to Mathura, and take a 3rd-class compartment train, then go to Delhi, take a cycle rickshaw to go to Chibiwara, a place where he was printing his books. And then, after printing the books, he would personally go from one library to another, requesting them to buy these books. So finally, as you know, in 1965, Prabhupada sailed for America. And in 1966, ISKCON was established. He registered a society called International Society of Krishna Consciousness. When the society was being registered, many people suggested, Swami, don't call this International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Call it International Society for God Consciousness. Prabhupada said, no, God has to be specific. And he insisted, and it was incorporated in this. Prabhupada had a revised manuscript that he had translated. So he sent two of his disciples, the late Brahmananda Prabhu, we had Godfather Brahmananda. He rendered a lot of service to Prabhupada in the early days. He was so committed to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada sent him and another devotee, Rama, to different publishers in New York, to inspiring them to publish this Gita. They went to many publishers. These publishers would read the manuscript and say, oh, no one's going to buy this. There's too much bhakti in it. Too much devotion. We want some modern words. No one's going to buy this. So they went to many publishing houses. They all read the manuscript. Then their editor said, there's too much devotion in these books. Too much mention of devotion. No one's going to buy these books. At that time, Prabhupada had recorded the Hare Krishna mantra in a record. I mean, now you don't even have the record industry, I think. Am I right?
Right.
At that time, they had these big records. What do you call that?
33 and
30, the big one.
Vinyl.
Yeah, 33 and a third.
Yeah.
Vinyl.
33 and a third were the small ones.
LP and
These are the LPs. So Prabhupada had recorded a happening record, the happening label in New York. And at that time, there was a prominent paper in a village called the Village Voice. I don't know if that paper still exists. In the Village Voice, there was an ad for the new record that Prabhupada had produced, the Hare Krishna mantra. And people could write in by correspondence. There was no email at that time. You had to write letters, and they had a process where the record could be sent by mail. So Brahmananda received a letter from an accountant who worked for Macmillan Company. Have you heard of Macmillan?
Yes.
It was, at least in Prabhupada's time, one of the biggest publishing houses in the world. I don't know what the status is now. So, one accountant who worked for Macmillan wrote a letter to the record company. Please send me a record. Here's the money. So, Brahmananda saw the letter. He took it to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, there's somebody who works for Macmillan Company who wants to buy your record. Prabhupada said, go personally and deliver the record to him. Everybody else, Prabhupada was mailing the record. But this man, Prabhupada said, that Prabhupada was desperately looking for a publisher to publish the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada told Brahmananda, don't send it by mail, you personally go to see him. So Brahmananda, dressed up in a suit, went to Macmillan Company to deliver the record. And when he went to the Macmillan Company, he discovered a man who wrote was just an accountant at Macmillan. He was a Macmillan company envelope, but he wasn't an editor. He was just an accountant. But as Providence would have it, in his office was present the religious editor of Macmillan books. When Brahmana went there with a record, the accountant introduced, "Here is Mr. So-and-so, the editor of our religious section," to Brahmananda. So Brahmananda was very dedicated and smart. He said, "My spiritual master has translated the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient book of wisdom, and I'm sure you'll like it. He's looking for someone to publish it." And the editor said, "That's exactly what I'm looking for, Bhagavad Gita. We've done the Quran, we've done the Bible, we've done the Jewish literature. We're looking for somebody by the Gita." The Brahmana went back to Prabhupada with this news. Prabhupada, "Take the manuscript and go the next morning." The Brahmana went the next morning, met the editor, and he saw it. "Okay, we'll publish it." And that's how the proposed Macmillan edition got published. So, Bhagavad Gita contains the essence of the vast Vedic knowledge. The Vedic knowledge is very vast. Even if you were to read every day of your life, still by the time you end, do people die in Atlanta or they don't? Someone told me people don't die in Atlanta. Do they? Well, many of you are not from Atlanta, no. Okay. So by the time you end the body, you'll end up reading only a small fraction. The entire knowledge of the Vedas is summarized in the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on the tour of southern India, and Lord Chaitanya was traveling with his devotees, and wherever they would go, people from great distance would come to see them. And just by seeing them, they were going to chant and dance. And then when they would go back, others by seeing them, they all began to chant and dance. And believe it or not, this way Lord Chaitanya converted entire South India to the path of Vaishnava. So when the Lord was there, he came to a temple in Śrīrangam. Śrīrangam has a historical temple, which is considered one of the biggest in India. There he saw that there was a Brahmin who was materially uneducated, and he would sit every day in one location next to a pillar and recite 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Because he was uneducated, some shlokas he pronounced correctly and some incorrectly. And some shlokas he understood, but most he did not understand. But in the Bhagavad Gita, there was a picture of Krishna becoming the Parthasarathi of his devotee Arjuna. In other words, becoming a chauffeur, driver. And the Brahman, when he would see the Supreme Lord is becoming a chariot driver of his devotee, he would meditate how merciful the Lord is. To what extent did he try to serve his devotee? And tears would come from his eyes. And Lord Chaitanya would see these were tears of ecstasy. Sometimes tears come when you are grief-stricken. Am I right?
Yes.
Sometimes tears come when you are excessively happy. Your stock is gone up. And sometimes tears come when one wants to express internal pictures. And sometimes people fake the tears. And you go to leaders in America, the word fake news is very common. With a prominent personality uses it. So you have fake news, you also have fake tears. And there are also sahajiyas who manifest fake tears. So these tears were genuine. Lord Chaitanya could see that. So he asked the Brahmin, what is it in the Bhagavad Gita that's making it display these tears? So then the Brahmin explained, I am actually uneducated. People laugh at me because I'm uneducated and they think I'm pretending to be spiritual, religious. But my Guru told me, please recite 18 chapters of Gita every day. So I try to do that. Some I understand, some people I don't. When I see Krishna becoming a chariot driver of a devotee, and tears will come, and these tears of ecstasy flow from my eyes. So Lord Chaitanya was so pleased. He embraced the Brahman and said, you have really understood the Bhagavad Gita. And then he kept the Brahman with him for 4 months and personally explained to him the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada explained, because this Brahman was reading the Gita every day, as a result of his Guru's order, Krishna personally appeared. So Prabhupada encouraged us to read the Bhagavad Gita every day, and I have encouraged people in many parts of the world to read the Bhagavad Gita, and it has worked miracles. The Bhagavad Gita has worked miracles. These days people are full of tension and depression. Is that right?
Yes.
Of course, if you chant Hare Krishna, then you can escape tension and depression. And what's the solution? Bhagavad Gita, ancient Bhagavad knowledge. So in the Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, text 72, Krishna inquired, O son of Pitha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? Are your ignorance and illusion now dispelled? Perhaps you can repeat after me. O son of Pitha,
O son of Pitha,
O conqueror of wealth,
O conqueror of wealth,
have you heard this?
Have you heard this?
With an attentive mind.
With an attentive mind.
Are your ignorance and illusion now dispelled?
Now dispelled.
And then Arjuna's reply. As far as Krishna speaking. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I regain my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and am prepared to act according to your instruction. So, in the second chapter, as some of you may know, Arjuna said, now I'm confused about my duty. Please instruct me. It's like sometimes the children come and say, please guide me. So Arjuna didn't know what to do. On the one hand, he was being induced, take part in this battle. You're a Kshatriya. It's your duty. But on the other hand, Arjuna was seeing, all the elderly people that he had great respect for, that he held in great reverence, were positioned opposite to him. Arjuna was saying, how can I engage in ghastly warfare? Even if I lose my whole kingdom, it doesn't matter. For me to shoot arrows at them is unacceptable. He was confused. It's like we get confused in our duty many times. So he instructed, he questioned Krishna, please instruct me. And then Krishna began to speak philosophy. And in the 18th chapter verses that we read, Krishna first inquired, is your illusion of God? If we heard everything with an attentive mind. And what did Arjuna say? Yes, my illusion is now gone. I'm free from doubt. Now I'm ready to act as you direct. So Bhagavad Gita is actually a book of knowledge. Prabhupada often said, Gita is not a religious book, it's a book of knowledge. And the knowledge presented in the Bhagavad Gita is universal. For example, in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there is a detailed presentation on the real self. Where is the real self? Who knows? What is the real self referred to? Soul. How many people have this knowledge? Prabhupada was lecturing. In many of Prabhupada's lectures, he would say, where is this department that teaches you? What happens after that? So in the 2nd chapter, Krishna says, within the body, there is the soul. For the soul, there is no birth and no death. Can the soul be seen? No. Can it be dried up? No. No. You can't see it. And how do you expect us to believe in it? What's the answer? We can't see it, but what? You can feel it. You feel it by the presence of consciousness. And what's the measurement of the soul? 1/10,000. The tip of it. It's not 1/10,000 the length of your hair. Don't be under that illusion. It was the length of the hair. And the ladies would have bigger souls than a man. There was a yogi who had a Sika. It was 1 kilometer long. So then his soul would probably weigh a few kilos. So Krishna has solved the problem. 1/10,000 the tip of the hair. It means, regardless of it, the male or female, the soul is the same. And Krishna gives a nice example. Just like we discard our old clothes and wear new clothes, the soul leaves one body and takes on another body. So this is important to understand why. In the absence of this knowledge, what do most people think? Yeah, who is speaking? Yes, sir. What do?
That they're their body. They think without this knowledge that we're the body.
They think that with death, everything finishes. Is that right?
Yes.
With death, everything finishes. Now, why do they think in this manner? Because they don't want to think that they are accountable for anything. The moment they accept the eternity of the soul, the moment they accept the eternal nature of the body, the eternal nature of the self, they will have to admit there is reward and punishment. When the Bible says, what shall I do if I gain the whole world or suffer the loss of eternal soul? You may gain the wealth of the whole world. You may have the wealth of all the millionaires put together. But if you lost your soul, what did you give? So the point we're trying to make is, what Bhagavad Gita is preaching is not some Hindu philosophy or philosophy meant for the Indians, but a universal philosophy. Today Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita has been translated in more than 85 languages of the world. And people are reading it all over the world. Why? Because it answers all your questions. So one question we have is, who am I? Where am I coming from? Where am I headed for? When you enter into any country, they ask you for a passport. Why? They want to know who you are. Then they ask you where you're coming from. Isn't it? And then they ask you, where are you going to stay? And you go to somewhere like Russia, they'll ask you 10 more questions. So they want you to know what your identity is. So we also similarly need to know, who am I? Someone may say, I feel insulted, you think I don't know who I am. But the reality is, we do not know. And if we know, we don't practice it. That means we don't know. So Bhagavad Gita explains this very important knowledge. And then Bhagavad Gita goes on to explain the philosophy of Karma Yoga. We have to act. Nobody can live without acting, am I right? You have to act in some capacity or the other. But Krishna says, act in such a way that your actions will free you from the bondage. Just like as citizens of any country, our endeavor is to follow the laws of the state. Am I right? Like now in Atlanta, you have this law. If you're speaking on the phone while driving, you get $1,000 ticket. I see people are more scared now. They weren't so scared before. And this is just a small law. There's so many laws with deeper punishments. So the point is, we try to follow the laws of the state. Similarly, Krishna says, he doesn't say don't act. He says act for my pleasure. Ma pleasure pradana. Offer the results to me. But our tragedy is, we want to be the enjoyer of the results. Am I right? We want to enjoy. If I'm earning money, I think, it's all into my hard work. So I should be the enjoyer. In ignorance and passion, one thinks that I am the enjoyer, I am the bhokta. And one who has knows in goodness, he understands the Lord is the supreme enjoyer. And by serving Him, I serve myself. Just like when you put food in the stomach, you automatically nourish the whole body also. So Krishna in the 5th chapter explains, don't act in such a way that you will get further bonded. You're already bonded. Yesterday you all celebrated the day that America got independence. We may get political independence. Do we get real independence? Real independence is independence from the cycle of what is that? We are not independent. We are dependent on so many factors. Am I right?
Yes.
We are dependent on importing vegetables from South America. How do you do? You're dependent on so many other factors. If we all, like the whole world has to say interdependent. And then we are dependent on the facilities given by the Lord. If you don't get rain, then what happens? Drought. No food production. Isn't it? So Krishna says, food gains come from rain, rainfall comes, and you perform religious duty. So Bhagavad Gita explains this principle. And in the 6th chapter of Dhyana Yoga, Krishna explains to make friends with the mind. The mind is a crucial player in our endeavor. Krishna says, one who has controlled the mind is the best of friends. One who has not controlled his mind, the mind is the worst enemy. We often say, he's my enemy, he's my enemy, he's my enemy. Actually, no one is your enemy. Your mind is your own enemy, the mind is your friend. When the mind is controlled, it is your friend. So you may say, what do you mean by controlling the mind? Who knows the answer? Who said that? Okay. Controlling the mind means positioning the mind in positive activities, not negative. The mind, you can be positive and you can be negative. If you think positively, think of Krishna's pastimes. What's your favorite pastime?
Ride around him and the bumblebee buzzing around.
Do you have a favorite pastime? Butter tea. Oh. So anyway, that's one way. Think of Krishna's pastime. Think of Krishna's instructions. What is Krishna's principal instruction in the Bhagavad Gita? What does this mean? Don't be a Muslim, don't be a Christian, don't be a Jew, be a Hindu. Is that the meaning? No, what this means is, your body, mind and senses serve the Lord. Not that you don't engage body, mind and senses in service of the Lord. Use all your facilities in service to the Lord. So, Bhagavad Gita enlightens us. Just like we go to school, get enlightened, we also need to cultivate spiritual knowledge. We must cultivate mature spiritual knowledge side by side. That is real success. So our request to all of you, how many of you have Bhagavad Gita as it is at home? I knew the response would be 100%. I expected that. Next question. How many of you read the Bhagavad Gita every day? So 100% have the book, 15% read the book. How many of you read it at least twice or thrice a week? So our request is, make it a habit to read the Bhagavad Gita every day. And that will help you. You may say, no time, no time, no time. Once in the early, before Prabhupada came to the West, he would publish a paper called Back to Godhead. And now that same paper is published in a magazine format. So Prabhupada wrote an article in one of the Back to Godhead. And the title was, Sorry, No Time. And that Prabhupada said, Prabhupada was preaching to a very important man who was working with the government of India. And Prabhupada was preaching to him to be Krishna conscious. And I'm like that. Swamiji, sorry, I'm very busy, I have no time. And the next day, he had a heart attack. And he died. So Prabhupada said, sorry, no time. So we say sorry, no time. But as they say in English, time and tide wait for no one. Does time wait for anyone?
No.
You tell old age, give me 5 more years. I'm not ready. You tell disease, my Medicaid papers are not ready. Trump has blocked the Obamacare. Wait till I get some new insurance. Will they wait for you?
No.
No. The time and tide wait for no one. Time goes on clicking. There was a famous devotee writer, Śrīla Gopāla. He gave us knowledge that is at par with the Vedic knowledge. The Śrīla Gopāla said, 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐭𝐫𝐚𝐜𝐿 A minute lost cannot be made up with the wealth of the entire world. You will waste a minute. You know, we value money, we value position, we value everything, but we don't value time. We don't care how time is spent. Śrīla Gopāla said, if you waste even 1 minute, you can't buy it back with the wealth of the whole world. So don't waste time. And the Bhagavatam says in the 2nd canto, with the rising and setting of the sun, the duration of everyone, but one who uses his life in service of the Lord is being reduced. Do we realize when the sun is set, 1 day less left in your life? Did anyone realize that? Well, those who read the scriptures realize it. By and large, people don't realize it. They just take things for granted. So Arjuna accepted Krishna's instruction. And now, first Krishna inquired, did he hear it attentively? So what does this mean? This means that when we are chanting the holy name, when we are reading the book, we should read them attentively. Don't use the book, scriptures, as a sleeping pill. You know what's a sleeping pill? Any of you use sleeping pills? It was a secret. I'm not going to tell that. So, people use the secret sleeping pill to fall asleep. So sometimes people have a habit to fall asleep while reading. They're half asleep when they start breathing and they become fully asleep. So read the Bhagavad Gita and the holy name attentively. Krishna inquired from Arjuna, did he hear this knowledge attentively? And Arjuna said, yes, I heard it attentively. Now I'm ready to act according to your direction. So we read the Bhagavad Gita, chant the holy name, stay in devotee association, then you will understand the importance of spiritual life. So friends, all of you sitting here have some degree of interest in spiritual life. Some of you may be very interested, some may be partially interested, some may be inquisitive. But the fact remains that you are here because you have some element of interest. Am I right?
Yes.
How many people in this room don't chant the mantra every day? Oh, how many of you chant it on 1 round a day? 2 rounds a day? 3 rounds a day? I think you're not understanding my language. I think I was speaking Greek. How many of you chant? How many of you chant 1 round a day? Now I spoke English. Okay. How many of you chant 2 rounds a day? And how many of you don't chant at all? Okay. So everyone chants at least 1 round a day and 2. Of course you could chant more, it's not offensive, but at least you're chanting. So there are devotees in this audience. Some chant 16, some chant less, some are beginners. But the fact remains that everyone sitting here has some interest in spiritual life. So our request is, read the Gita every day. It will help you have a peaceful mind. These days people often say, I'm stressed out at work. Is that a common statement?
Yes.
They say, my company just wants to exploit my end. In Japan, they have a culture where if you don't work hard, you get fired. And people are so dedicated to their work that many of them sleep at work. This is part of the culture. I had a Russian engineer get a job at Toyota in Russia. And he told me, I can't believe it. These Japanese, they don't go home. They just stay 24 hours in the office and they expect us to do the same. So, that is one culture. So the point is, if we stay in devotee association, we'll be inspired to be inspired to progress spiritually. And reading the Bhagavad Gita will save you from stress, anxiety. I was recently talking to psychologists in Washington, they're devotee psychiatrists, very high level psychologists. And they were telling me how whatever cases they get. So people are under depression, families are falling apart, etc. Just because we lack spiritual knowledge. So this spiritual knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita will give you peace. Therefore Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. One who reads the Gita will all be joyful and happy. So you want to be joyful?
Yes.
But when you want to be joyful by going to the Bahamas, how many want to be joyful by reading the Bhagavad Gita? Most people think if you go to the Bahamas or the West Indies or somewhere else. In India they think you go abroad. In India they'll advertise, fly to London and be happy. And in London they'll advertise, fly to India and be happy. In Atlanta they will say, fly to California and be happy. And in California they will say, fly to Atlanta and be happy. The people are always thinking the grass is greener on the other side. But friends, the grass is not green anywhere. That is simply an illusion. Whether you live in India or in America, the sevenfold miseries won't be very much. So read the Bhagavad Gita daily, and that will give you a peaceful life. Hare Krishna. So, I'll take on some questions if you have. I always leave some time for questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna. My name is Preeti. So one of the qualities that they say in order to improve your spiritual advancement is to avoid the company of non-devotees. So sometimes family members are also non-devotees. How do you avoid their association and still follow that principle?
Good question. The family members be externally very nice, sweet, respectful, but be determined from inside not to compromise spiritually. We don't say abandon your relationship with your family members. You have a relationship, you can be nice, polite, but internally be determined, I don't want to give up spiritual life. Okay. That's common problem everywhere. The family members think you're wasting your life. You're spoiling your children's life. You're ruining them. You don't understand. They are ruining. in the absence of spiritual knowledge. Okay, any more questions? Want to say a few words, Bhagavad?
No, just a question.
Prabhuji,
You can refer.
can you take the mic so that everyone
I can speak loud.
No, we have people are sitting in the other rooms also, so it will be easy.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you were referring to in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna tells Krishna, Sishastiham Sarimam Tvam Prapanam, I'm your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. But then, just maybe 2 verses after that, Arjuna concludes by saying, but Govinda, I shall not fight. So I find that to be a little bit interesting, if not confusing, how he's saying, I'm your disciple, I'm surrendered, indicating that I'm ready to take your instruction. But then he says, before Krishna even begins to instruct him, I'm not going to fight. So
that was Arjuna's confusion. Fight or not fight. So he wants to be Krishna, surrender to Krishna. But at the same time, he doesn't want to fight. That's the whole problem. That is the mood that instigated the Gita being spoken. Arjuna really didn't know. Act, not act, act, how to act. So any more questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You spoke about depression. My name is Mohit. You spoke about people being depressed and sometimes giving up on their life. That is something which we had been, seeing for a while about people who have been in debts or who have failed relationships. But of late, we are seeing people who are very accomplished, who are doing well in life, who are rich. Recent examples of 𝐃𝐲𝐬𝐭𝐫𝐚𝐿, Anthony Bourdain, people who are living very good lives, and even they committed suicide. So, gave up on life. So, what is it that is driving people who are so accomplished to give up their life?
The simple fact that material success does not give you real happiness. We are under the illusion. If I go to America, if I get my green card, if I get my citizenship, if I get a secure job, I'll be happy. But in material life, you can never be happy. And in material life, your desires go on multiplying. It's not that you become a millionaire and you're satisfied. The millionaires of the world are becoming richer, as you know. They have the money, they can expand, but that doesn't give them real happiness. Whereas a poor man who takes shelter of the holy name is satisfied by his chanting of holy name. Material success doesn't bring happiness, but spiritual success brings happiness. You never hear a spiritualist committing suicide, a genuine spiritualist. The suicide rates all over the world are increasing, and especially in the first world countries, the suicide rates are an all-time high. Sweden, Japan, and so many other countries. Even in America, I don't have the figures with me now, but I remember it's increasing. This goes to prove the fact that material success doesn't give you real happiness. And why do people commit suicide? They're in so much anxiety, they think if we commit suicide, the whole show will end. But suicide is against the laws of God. When you commit suicide, the repercussion is you become a ghost. You're worse off. It's like somebody runs from a prison. The suicide is a false process to free us of our misery. And because people are in ignorance, they don't know. A month ago in India, I read one so-called guru in Madhya Pradesh. He shot himself. Forget what his name was. He was politically connected. So my point is, if you're a genuine sadhu, you will never dream of suicide. Even if you have to undergo suffering, you will think, oh, I deserve something 1,000 times more. The Lord has minimized it. Okay? More question. More question. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My name is Divya. Since we were talking about suicide, what about like very advanced yogis who willingly give up their life, like in samadhi? And then, how would...
But that is different. They are engaged. Of course, they don't willingly give their life. The Lord has to agree to. We all come to the world with a certain quota or lifespan. Nobody willingly gives up. But when the time death comes, a devotee, somebody who has practiced spirituality, does not fear death. Just like a student, if he has been studying all along, he's not scared if the exam comes tomorrow. But somebody who is not prepared, he is scared. So one who has practiced spirituality, he is not scared. So yogis, they don't voluntarily give up. They are prepared for death because they have practiced spirituality. Yes.
What happens, like, if they have any Hare Krishna, what happens if they have unnatural death? That's not in our control, right?
Who has unnatural death?
Any people, they have road accident and they die, and do they become ghosts, or what happens to them?
When they die in a kur, death has to come in some format or the other. They come in an accident, they come in the form of a disease, but no, they don't become a ghost if you die in an accident. You become a ghost when you take away your life against the laws of God. But when you die in an accident, it's more like it's death, but it's not suicide. There's a difference between suicide and death. More questions?
I have one question. That is, should we give our organs, like donate our organs after death? Is it advisable?
I'm not going to answer that. It's up to the individual.
Do Vaishnavas, do they have any rules, like should not, or...
Can you speak on the mic? So that
It's... do Vaishnavas have any rules, like
No,
they should not or something?
No, we have cases where one devotee gave an organ, another senior devotee. It's allowed. There are cases even in our society where that does happen.
But is it good? Should we do it?
sounds like you're planning to get one.
My husband was roti. He drank his whole book.
Oh.
I don't fix to I can hold the body.
Oh.
My husband.
Very nice. Any more questions? If somebody wants to voluntarily give up an organ, he can. Any more questions?
No more questions.
No?
I know what I will.
Over here.
Asking questions is a sign of intelligence. You're testing everyone's IQ.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you for the class. Will you touch a little on your explaining that spiritual life, with engaging in spiritual life, reading Bhagavad Gita, that we'll become happy. Will you touch a little on the fact that there will be suffering as well? I mean, sometimes I think I wonder if the children see suffering amongst the devotees and think, wait a minute, this is not happiness. Will you speak a little on that, please?
It's not, we don't say that if you read Bhagavad Gita, read Bhagavatam every day, chant 60 rounds, you will not fall sick. We don't say you won't get old, and we don't say you won't die. These basic miseries are going to strike everyone. But there's a difference. A devotee, when he has to go through suffering, he knows the cause of the suffering. And he knows the cure to the suffering. The cause of the suffering is, we're all in material existence. We're all here because we have rebelled at some time or another. And we all have our history of our own. Krishna says, if you surrender to me, I'll minimize it. But he doesn't say it becomes zero. Prabhupada is to give an example. The High Court will sentence you to 10 years in jail. And when you appeal, it gets reduced to 5 years. The punishment is still there, but it's reduced. We don't say, you read the Bhagavad Gita every day, you never have to have doctor darshan. We don't say that. There will be misery. But you're also taking care of the cure. Whereas the materialist doesn't know the cause of distress, he doesn't know the cure of distress. You agree? Okay, any more? Yes.
Thank you for everything. I just lost my dad, and my kids are asking a lot of good questions. They're 6 and 3 years old. They ask, can Dada see us now that he's in God's house? Because we say that Dada is not here with us, but he went to God's house. That's where he lives now. So the question they keep on coming up with, like, can Dada see us right now? Can Dada hear us right now? Can his soul, because we're trying to explain to a 3-year-old what a soul is. Like, just because you're not physically here does not mean you're not here. You know, I'm not even sure if I'm doing a good job at explaining to a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old death and afterlife. So can you give some guidance on how to teach a child or children?
I'll give you a general answer, not specifically related to your case. When we die, there is no guarantee that we are going to God's house. If you go to God's house, one has to practice strict spiritual discipline, be bereft of material desires. Then only can we eligible to go to God's house. We often say, oh, he left for heavenly abode. But there's no guarantee that we are going to gain entrance in the heavenly abode. As far as their children are concerned, just train them up in the basic elements that within every body there's a soul. The soul doesn't die, only the body perishes. And once a person leaves the body, the whole connection with others is gone. Our relationship as mother, father, husband, wife, brother, sister, is short term. It's just like straws in the ocean. They come together and they get separated. We come together today, tomorrow we'll go our own ways.
The other question they asked was, why do we believe in cremation versus, being buried? Like, why do we burn that as body down and turn into ash?
In the Bible there is a statement, thus thy art and thus thou shalt become. Prabhupada often quoted this. So whether the body is burnt, it becomes ashes. When the body is buried, you may bury it in a very expensive casket. A funeral in the Western world is an expensive business. And they usually do so much makeup on the body that sometimes you can't even recognize it. So even if you have an expensive casket, in the end the ants end up eating inside. In pharmacies in India, the process is you throw the body in a well and the eagles come and eat it. So either way, whether the body is eaten or burned or buried, it turns into ashes. Different religions have different traditions. The end result is the same. This body that we decorate, we stand in front of the mirror 20 times a day. Is that right? You want to know if our beauty is increasing every minute or not. So, well, later it's going to become into ashes. If someone tells you you look so beautiful, you feel flattered. And someone tells you you look so ugly. Tell an old man how young he looks, he is flattered. Tell a young man how old he looks, he is humiliated. Okay? So how many of you are ready to read the Bhagavad Gita every day? These are all supplementary questions. The real question is, how many of you are ready to read the Bhagavad Gita every day? So how many of you will read the Gita every day?
Promise.
Promise. At least one verse per word. Okay, thank you.